after the success of the close combat MS-07 goof, the Zeon Earth Attack Forces set out to create the ultimate close combat mobile suit, and the result of their tireless work was the MS-08TX Efreet. Sufficient to say, they succeeded in their goal. The Efreet was said to be invincible in close combat, and it had powerful thrusters to allow it to quickly get within striking distance. These were so powerful, in fact, that they weren't just the most powerful at the time of its rollout, but even exceeded those of the later Gelgoog. And once within range, its standard weapon loadout consisted of 1 or 2 heat sabers stored on the hips, a pair of head-mounted Vulcan guns, and a shotgun with several different interpretations. Earlier sources say that the shotgun was made exclusively for the Efreet, but later sources show it as being the same shotgun that the Kämpfer uses. And on top of that, it also came with 4 smoke dischargers, allowing it to more easily engage an enemy, or disengage an enemy, depending on the situation. All in all, the Efreet seemed like a great addition to Zeon's land army, but there were a few problems. First of all, the Zeon Earth Attack Forces focused mainly on making this thing as powerful as possible, resulting in a lot of custom-made parts that were not well suited for mass production, and its power also made it much more difficult to pilot. And secondly, the Efreet was made at a time when the Zeon High Command was looking for their next generation mass production mobile suit for space combat. And this makes a lot of sense. While the Efreet seems to have been rolled out before Operation Odessa, and therefore before the Federation's big push to drive Zeon off of the planet, the writing must have already been on the wall. So with Zeon's homeland being in space, it only makes sense for them to focus all of their efforts on a space-first mobile suit rather than a ground-first mobile suit, even if it did have the ability to be converted for space use. More on this later. As a result, only 8 of these machines would be produced, and they would be handed out to various special units, experimental units, and ace pilots, with almost each and every one of them being further customized. So now, let's go over those units that we know about, brought to you by NordVPN, the premier VPN service that will help you dodge all of those pesky region locks and will also give you more security while browsing online. And by using the code kkrt or using the link down below, you'll not just get a sweet discount, but you'll also be supporting the channel. The first Efreet that we were introduced to then was Efreet Unit 4. This machine appeared in the Cross Dimension Super Famicom game and was a unit customized specifically for the leader of Zeon's Wolfguard team, Henry Boone. Unfortunately though, it's not mentioned how the machine was modified from its stock configuration, and instead, this machine has pretty much become regarded as the de facto standard Efreet. The story of this unit then begins 5 days after the death of Garmazabi, with a big Zeon push into Asia. But the Federation would be able to withstand this attack and send them packing. And it was during this retreat that the Wolfguard team got separated from the main Zeon forces and accidentally witnessed a new Gundam that the Federation was preparing to use in their own big push towards Odessa. This then made their new target this brand new Pixie Gundam. And while they would succeed in preventing the Pixie from being delivered to Odessa, the fate of the Efreet would depend on the player. In one ending, the Efreet is destroyed, but in the other ending, the Efreet makes it out alive. The second numbered unit then that we know about is Unit 5, which appeared in the Side Stories PlayStation 3 game. It was originally used by the captain of the Mercosius Corps, Doug Schneid, and it would also get a few modifications. It was painted in Doug's personal colors, and its weapons were changed to be more in line with his combat style. It got the Goof's triple-barreled machine gun, the Dom's giant bazooka, as well as a new prototype melee weapon called the Heat Lancer. But rather than a lance, this was a giant halberd-esque weapon that gave the unit considerably more reach during combat. Near the end of the war, this Efreet would be handed over to Fred Raber, with Doug getting his Pixie in return. Fred would continue to use the Efreet until the end of the war, but once it was over, he and the Efreet would go their separate ways. A little over a decade though, they would be reunited for the events transpiring in Gundam Unicorn. And over this decade, the Efreet had been gradually upgraded into a completely different beast. Its generator was twice as powerful, allowing it to deliver more immediate power to the actuators in the joints, giving it much higher agility, and then in turn, much greater combat performance that even allowed it to go toe-to-toe with modern mobile suits. And to compensate for this stronger reactor, the chest was outfitted with better cooling vents. And what also changed were its weapons. The triple-barreled machine gun and heat lancer were gone, the Dom's giant bazooka stayed, the shotgun was back as a secondary weapon, and its new main weapons were 14 heat darts. These are kunai-like weapons that could be superheated to penetrate armor. They could either be used as handheld weapons or thrown, which is something that Fred really liked doing with the daggers of his Pixie Gundam. Which is then also why he now got 14 of the things. 4 are stored on each shoulder and on the left forearm, and 2 are stored on the back skirt. Plus, in the Noble Shroud manga, it could also be seen using the Goof's heat sword and even a beam saber. And for extra defensive capabilities, it even got some Gundarium alloy incorporated into its armor, although it's never specified which parts. Seeing all of these changes then, Fred decided to rename this Efreet to the Efreet Schneid in honor of its first pilot, Doug Schneid. Also, Schneid is German for guts or courage, but it is also linked to cutting, which is very fitting for a machine with 14 dagger-like weapons. Moving on to the non-numbered machines then, with the most famous one no doubt being the Efreet Custom, which appeared in the Blue Destiny Saturn games and was used by Xeon Ace pilot Nimbus Sturzen. This machine was modified to incorporate the experimental exam system that was being developed by Dr. Klust Moses. Through unscrupulous means, this system was meant to give the pilot pseudo-new-type powers, making the high-performance Efreet the perfect testbed. It was outfitted with extra leg-mounted thrusters, making its already high mobility even higher. Its cooling systems were upgraded, the shoulder armor was made pointier, and the entire head was enlarged because it now needed to house the exam system and all of its cooling systems. For the weapons then, these also got changed around quite a bit, with the only thing remaining the same being the 2 heat swords. But in addition to now being stored on the side skirts, they could also be mounted on the backpack. The head-mounted Vulcan guns were removed because they had to make room for the exam system, but in their place, the Efreet Custom would get some much more powerful ranged weapons on its arms and on its legs. It got a twin grenade launcher on each forearm and a 6-tube missile launcher on each leg. And once all of those missiles were fired, these pods could be jettisoned to decrease the dead weight. In short, the Efreet Custom was a deadly unit without the exam system activated, and overwhelmingly so when the system decided to kick in. So it was a good thing for the Federation that Dr. Moses decided to defect, taking the exam system with him, so that they could fight fire with fire. And in the manga version, a space version of the Efreet Custom would also appear. And it is with this space version that we get the lore that the standard Efreet could also be adopted for space combat. Because with the Efreet Custom, it is mentioned that they went one step beyond that. They didn't just convert it for space, they upgraded it for space, with extra propellant tanks on the backpack, different shoulders resembling those of the Gelgoog, and a 3-tube missile launcher on each arm, resembling those used by the Gelgoog cannon. And his Efreet Custom space type was used early on in the development of the exam system before the events of the video game. Next up then, in Gundam 0081 for the PlayStation 3, we get the Efreet Nacht. a mobile suit that went with a very different approach when compared to the Efreet Custom. Rather than explosive power, this machine was meant to operate like a ninja. Stealthy and under the cover of night, which is also where the name came from. Nacht is German for night. Developed under Mikuve, the Efreet Nacht featured various upgrades to make it as stealthy as possible. It came with a special jamming system to hide it from radar, and it was designed to minimize its heat signature. It featured retractable thrusters on the backpack, the vents on the backpack and even the chest were eliminated, the sub-thruster on the crotch was axed, and even its weapons were changed. Rather than a heat sword, its main weapon was now a cold blade. This blade could not be superheated, but it did have the ability to block beam sabers, leading some sources to believe that it had some kind of anti-beam coating. This weapon was also known as the Nacht blade, and it was now stored in a scabbard on the backpack when not in use. Its other weapons then were a triple Gatling gun housed in a cover on the left forearm, and 4 cold kunai that were stored on hardpoints on the side skirts and legs. Just like the Efreet Schneid's heat darts, these could be handheld or thrown, but instead of being superheated, they could deliver an electric shock, again to lower its heat signature. And as a finishing touch, the machine was also painted in a dark purple color scheme to make it perfect for nighttime operations. The Nacht no doubt would have been a very powerful asset for the Zeon military on Earth, had Mikuve not decided to hide it, after which the Federation found it and put it in storage, after which it would be reclaimed by the Invisible Knights Zeon Remnant Group in UC-0081. And this is then how Eric Blank would end up as the pilot of the Efreet Nacht. Also, despite being hidden by Mikuve, the Nacht's data would be used by 2 other mobile suits. All the way in UC-0084, we have the MS-14R Gelgoog High Mobility Type Assault Type, which appeared in the Gundam 0083 Rebellion manga. Despite the name hinting at this machine being a Gelgoog, and it being developed from the Gelgoog Marine Commander type, we can also see some very obvious inspiration from the Nacht on both the armor and the weapons. It used a cold blade, cold kunai, and an arm-mounted triple Gatling gun, all of which seem to be either similar to the ones used by the Nacht or straight up identical to the ones used by the Nacht. And for the second Nacht-inspired machine, we go back to the One-Year War with the Efreet Jaeger. This machine appeared in Gundam Battle Operation Code Fairy and was operated by the Secret Noisy Fairy unit in North America. Originally, this Efreet was delivered to the unit in its stall configuration for use by Alma Stirner because she was the unit's close combat specialist, so it was the perfect mobile suit for her. However, due to circumstances, it would instead be assigned to the team's long-range specialist, Helena Hagel. In her first mission, she would use the Efreet as is, but after this, it would quickly be overhauled to be more suited to her long-range combat style, turning it from the Efreet into the Efreet Jaeger. Although this quick overhaul was not without its sacrifices. For example, in terms of weapons, it used a sawed-off shotgun, a heat knife shaped like a kukri, 2 chaff cracker grenades, and a conventional sniper rifle that could be loaded with a variety of bullets. And to make better use of the sniper rifle, a crutch was installed on the unit's right knee. This made taking a sniper position much easier and was copied from the Zaku 1 sniper type. And if need be, it could also use the Zaku 1 sniper type's beam sniper rifle. However, all of this extra weaponry and equipment made the Efreet heavier and harder to use in close combat. Another machine that it got some inspiration from was the Efreet Nacht. It incorporated its stealth system, and it also got the extra leg-mounted thrusters for added speed. This not just made the Jaeger a difficult machine to track down on the battlefield, but it also allowed it to quickly change between ranged combat and melee combat. Other upgrades then were a different color scheme, a small shield added to the right shoulder, another small shield added to the left lower arm, and the removal of the head-mounted antenna. And finally then, an unidentified Efreet could also be spotted on board of the Minaret when it escaped during the Battle of Abawaku, just before the end of the One-Year War. But that is literally everything that we know about this unit. So let's wrap up this video with some fun facts. Despite the original Efreet not appearing in any Gundam anime, minus some video game cutscenes, it was actually meant to appear in them. Twice. According to a Dengeki Hobby interview with Umanosuke Ida, Norris Packard was originally meant to pilot an Efreet instead of a Goof custom. And then according to the keynotes of Turn A Gundam's 4th Laserdisc, one of the first mobile suits considered by the production staff for Will Game was the Efreet. But this idea was then quickly shot down by them because they agreed that a mobile suit with a cannon would be much better, leading to the G-Cannon inspired Cannon Il Futo. Or at least, that's how we know that mobile suit today, because what was meant to stick was the name, and instead of Cannon Il Futo, the production staff actually wanted to call this thing the Cannon Efreet. But then when the time came for Tomino to finalize this name, he wrote down Cannon Il Futo. And while in English they might sound quite different, when you look at the Japanese spelling, they are really similar. So similar in fact, that the paragraph ends by speculating that Tomino might just have accidentally misspelled the name. But we will probably never know, like maybe he just thought that Cannon Il Futo sounded better than Cannon Efreet. You be the judge of that. But that has been everything for the Efreet's development history. It might not have been produced for long, but for the most part, Zeon sure made the most out of these machines. And maybe in the future, we'll get even more information on them, because it's just the perfect side story commander/ace mobile suit, and so far, we only have information on 6 of the 8 units, with one of those 6 known units only getting a really quick cameo. So don't forget to check out NordVPN with the code kkrt or the link down below. As always, a big thank you to the Patreon supporters. I hope everyone watching has a great day, and I'll see you all next time.